I get it, you're about to drop a serious chunk of cash on a keyboard, and you're scrolling through a sea of specs, trying to decide if it's worth the hype or just another pricey piece of gear that'll sit untouched. Maybe you've watched a couple of demo videos, heard the 2000 plus sounds line, and thought, sounds great. But can I actually use all that in a real gig or home studio without feeling like I'm juggling a circus? That hesitation is exactly what I felt when a friend asked me whether the Korg Pa5X 88 key arranger was the right fit for his small venue band. Before you make the plunge, let's walk through what it really does for people who actually play, not just what the brochure says. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the Pa5X is trying to be the Swiss Army knife of stage keyboards. It's packed with more than 2,000 sounds, half a thousand styles, and a few hundred keyboard set presets, and it throws them all behind an 8-inch high-resolution touchscreen that you can tilt for a better view. On paper, that's a lot, and it can feel overwhelming. The real question is, do those numbers translate into a workflow that feels natural when you're on stage or recording at home? If you're the type of player who likes to jump from a piano ballad straight into a synth-driven funk groove without swapping gear, the Pa5X's smooth sound transition is actually a lifesaver. When you're in the middle of a set and you trigger a new style, the keyboard blends the previous instrument's tail into the new one, so you don't get that jarring cutoff that makes the audience wince. I tried that switching between a classic jazz piano comp and a modern EDM arpeggio during a mock set, and the transition was seamless enough that it felt like a single, evolving soundscape rather than two disjointed patches. That kind of fluidity matters when you're the sole keyboardist covering multiple roles. Polyphony is another practical point. The Pa5X boasts maximum polyphony, which, for a Korg arranger, means you essentially never hear notes get cut off because the engine runs out of voices. In a live context, where you might layer pads, arpeggios, and a sustained lead, that extra headroom prevents the dreaded note drop that can ruin a chorus. If you've ever been stuck with a 64-note polyphony limit and heard the higher notes disappear under a heavy chord, you'll appreciate this freedom. Now, let's talk about the touchscreen. It's not just a glossy screen. It's the primary navigation hub. You can browse sounds, edit style parameters, and even draw custom chord progressions with a few taps. The tilt feature helps when you're sitting at a desk versus standing on a stage. You can angle it for a better line of sight without having to hunch over. However, there's a trade-off. The touchscreen can be a bit temperamental under bright stage lights. I noticed that when I cranked the venue's floodlights up, the screen's contrast dropped, and the icons became a little harder to read. It's not a deal-breaker, but it does mean you'll want a quick glance at the ambient lighting before you commit to using the screen as your main control during a high-energy set. Who should buy the Pa5X? If you're a gigging musician who needs a single instrument to cover piano, organ, synth, and a whole host of accompaniment styles, this keyboard hits a sweet spot. Band leaders who arrange on the fly will love the instant style switching and the ability to edit chord progressions on the fly without pulling out a laptop. It also makes sense for home producers who want a tactile way to experiment with a massive library of sounds without diving into a DAW every time. The 88-key weighted action gives you a realistic piano feel, which is a nice bonus if you're used to acoustic keys. Who should skip it? If you're primarily a synth designer who spends hours sculpting patches from scratch, you might find the built-in sounds limiting compared to a dedicated synth workstation. The Pa5X leans heavily on its preset library, so while you can edit parameters, you won't have the deep waveform-level editing that a modular synth offers. Also, if you're looking for a compact, portable solution for small coffee shop gigs, the 88-key form factor and the weight of the unit make it less travel-friendly than a 61-key arranger or a lightweight synth module. A practical strength that's easy to overlook is the inclusion of PCM data from Korg's SV2 and Nautilus keyboards. Those are two of Korg's flagship sound engines, and the Pa5X inherits a chunk of their tonal character. When I pulled up a classic electric piano patch that's originally from the SV2, it sounded rich and detailed, with the same gritty realism you'd expect from a higher-priced workstation. That cross-pollination means you're not just getting a generic bank of sounds. You're tapping into Korg's broader ecosystem. On the flip side, the sheer size of the sound library can be a double-edged.